Hey, what's up, guys? Lucas Burnley here. You are listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. Just sat down with my co host, TJ Schwarz, who is very excited today. I can see it and I can hear it in his voice. But we're going to follow up on our goals from last week, I think, before we dig into whatever it is you're grinning about.
Okay.
Goals.
Yeah,
What were
sounds
they?
good. Well, my goal was to machine a bevel on the Overland on the new machine on the Syil. And I don't know if it'll come through on the podcast, but one is running right now in the background. I can hear it through my sheetrock. But I got like 5 of them machined, so I I got a +1. I didn't finish it
Plus.
last week, so I got 1 point out of 2. So the question is, did you complete yours this week?
So I did not.
Okay, so tight game.
Ongoing. I'm gonna still call it a success because I've like
Okay.
modified my plan.
Okay.
My plan was that I was going to try to finish the 5 Quikens that I was working on.
hmm
That was part of a plan that I was just going to try to make sure that I finished 5 folders every month.
hmm
And I think what I'm seeing is right now I'm going to modify the plan slightly to just make sure that I always have 5 folders in progress.
Nice. Cool.
So yeah, they're really close. I just finished ground the blades today. I'm tumbling parts. But I'll have a little bit of time in assembly. I'm always messing with stuff too as I do
Yeah.
models. Like I'll bend clips a different way or
Yeah.
slows me down. But
Continual improvement.
continual improvement. So
Yeah. Sometimes I have to slap my wrist when it comes to improvements, though,
yeah,
because I'll like try to reinvent the wheel maybe too many times, and then be like,
yes.
"Wait, just freaking do it, dude! Just do it."
It's tying into the
Yeah.
maker manager thought process
hmm
too. Like I've
hmm
been pretty good lately. I'm like, all right, I saw a modification that I wanted to make in my grinding room, but I forced myself to not do it. I just wrote it
Yeah.
down and kept on working.
Yeah. No, that's
So
smart.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
painful though. I'm like, I just want to build a little fixture. I like
Right.
just a little tooling arm. I was like, man, that'd be really
Yeah.
handy.
That always gets me with feeds and speeds too on a CNC machine, because
Yeah,
I'm always like, that one program I could change that helix angle a little bit, and then it's pretty soon you get like 2 parts done in a day, because every time you run a
yeah,
operation you change it, and it's like, well,
tweaking it.
eventually you just got to start throwing carbide at it and just saying that's good enough.
Yeah, best practice. Like,
Yeah,
how many parts do you make before you modify?
yeah,
Right.
for
All right.
sure.
So, okay, so that's like a 50% split today. You accomplished your goal. I did not. Dang.
Well, yeah. So I guess we're kind of at a one point out of 2 for both of us, I
Oh wait,
guess.
because yours ran long, right?
My
Did
what?
you? No, you hit your timeline.
Last week I didn't get a point.
Okay.
I
Right.
didn't
Okay.
do it. I didn't finish it. So
Right. Okay.
that was
But
the
this week.
scalpels.
Okay. All right.
But no, like I said, I'm smiling because I'm listening to my machine run in the background. Which the reason that feels good is I spent 3 weeks, 4 weeks flipping parts every minute to 6 minutes for those scalpels, and we talked about it at length on the podcast. But it was deadly to the mindset that I had. It didn't feel good. It sucked. Kind of hated life. And now I can listen to my machine run and I can be on a podcast and it feels a lot better.
All is right
So,
with the world.
yeah. So, depending on how I tweak the bevel, because the bevel is the main majority of the actual machine time,
Yep.
depending on how I tweak that, it could be like between 30 and 45 minutes per knife, is what it's looking like total for the finished knife. And so, right now, it's like 32 minutes. I'm liking it. I think I'll
Wait,
stick there.
that's fully done. That's both bevels, profiling, everything.
Everything, chamfers.
And
Yeah.
are you're running like a multi stage fixture, so
Yeah.
every
Water.
process it like moves through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So water jet blank, that's surface ground, goes
Yep.
in, and every time I hit cycle start, I've got a finished knife, quote unquote finished, done machining, and a new water jet blank goes in.
Goes
So
in.
yeah,
And what
one
is that
piece
cycle
flow.
time?
32 minutes right now. Like
Whew.
if I ran the exact same speeds and feeds that I ran on the Tormach, it'd probably only be like 22 minutes. But because the machine is so much faster and more rigid, I'm pursuing like a little bit better finish on the bevels even yet. And so because it's so much faster, I can afford to make it do more, basically
Right.
more step overs.
Right.
And so I'm trying to figure out where the new balance is with the new machine. Because one thing I've found is the finer step overs obviously give you better finishes. That's just obvious. But the only problem with that is if you think about the cutter, it only, like, no matter what the step over is, there's a certain number of passes that each cutter can do.
Right.
So in a weird way, when you do a more coarse step over, the tool actually lasts longer, which can be a little counterintuitive
Right.
because it's making less cuts. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the only problem is if I go super fine on the step over, I'm not too worried about the cycle time, but the tool takes like 3 times as many cuts, and so it wears out, 3 times faster.
Right.
And
And
so
it's more spindle time
yeah,
too. So here's like, this is a game versus the gain, right? Like the argument can be made that probably the cost of the carbide end mill doesn't really matter.
right, right.
Right.
Hmm.
But it's like redlining, right? So you're doing everything at the utmost. You're running the spindle as much as you possibly can, and you're running your end mills more or as much as you possibly can, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
The way that I would question that, I guess, is like, what does that shave off of your hand finishing time?
That's what I'm going to test. So I've got I haven't done any stoning on these new blades, like hand stoning. So I've got a couple sitting out there on the bench that I'll look at tomorrow morning and stone. And
Yep.
there are a couple different feeds and speeds. And I'll see if there's not like a noticeable difference in how much stoning time, then I'll go on a little bit more on the coarse side on the step over.
Yeah.
So it's just like your typical data analysis. You got a curve that intersects, two different curves that intersect, and
Right.
one's step over and one's the amount of time it takes me to stone it. And so, yeah, I'll chase that a little bit. I chased it a lot on the Tormach, but this machine's just a different beast, So that whole formula changed, and so that's a good thing.
Very
It's
good.
better
Yeah,
at
that's
the end of the
exciting.
day, and I changed everything. It's a new fixture with some new clamping going on. It's got a new tool holder, which should have less run out. It's a hydraulic tool holder, which should have less vibration, more dampening. It's a bigger spindle, a faster rapid, like everything changed. So, but what I did find is I love the Pearson. I put the Pearson fixed pallet fixture on there. Honestly, those things are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
Like, I think I paid $1,500 for it. I'd probably pay 15,000, maybe not literally, but like
Yeah.
it all of a sudden made me feel like everyone should have one of
It
these
was
things.
such a good value proposition. I have a Jergens fixture base plate on my mill.
Hmm.
The Pearson wasn't an option when I bought that.
Hmm.
It's 5,000. I think I paid $5,000 for the base plate.
Hmm.
So Pearson really, I mean, similar to Syil, man, it's like a crazy value proposition, especially for our size shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I
And
actually, my buddy Keaton just loaned me. He had one of the small.
that's what I've got.
Yeah.
The
So
MPS.
with like the single.
Yeah. It's a single hold down, like
Yep.
ball
Single hold
bearing
down.
hold down with
Yep.
2 locating pins and 2 locating pads.
Yep. So I have the same one as you do. I haven't set it up yet, but he loaned it to me to try out.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I think it's just as good as the full size one in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, because the big one still has the same amount of location feature going on.
Yeah.
It's identical locating. The difference is it's got double the hold down,
Right.
which why that matters is for if you were to cut like a big casting with a long tool, you don't want to lift the pallet. Like, there's
Right.
only a certain amount of hold down force. And I don't think
Not knife
we
making
could,
problems.
yeah, I don't think we could generate enough force for that to matter.
I just saw a third
So,
variable in your proposition.
okay.
Tool wear, obviously. So tool wear, but as it relates to hand finishing. So
Hmm.
I would almost say it's like you'd have to run your step over to the point of tool wear
Hmm.
and hand finish to see that if when the tool was worn, if that one, say you pulled off one knife at the end and that one knife could blow out your time savings because of the tool wear based
Hmm.
on the step over.
That's a good point. The only thing is, because I'm stoning it soft, I can blow through almost anything that comes out of the mill. And that's why I was running it so fast on the Tormach, is I did kind of find that like even a coarse step over and even a dull tool, I could blow right through it with a
There you
stone
go.
on a annealed
So
steel.
there's probably a margin where you're running like 80% of capacity or something.
Right.
You like actually have a visible step over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it stones out at the same rate
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
close to.
But what I found is my fear is we're talking a 12 thou edge and even
Yeah.
a little less. And if the tool's dull, what you get is stress
Right.
in that. And I'm worried that because it has to then go to heat treat, that I'd get a warp on that 12th thou edge if the tool gets too dull.
Yep.
So in reality, if it wasn't such a thin thing, like if I was surfing some kind of block of steel that
Right.
wasn't thin, you could go a lot longer. But I'm weary of getting too greedy with the
Where does your
carbide. And
brain
then
kick into thin?
what's that?
So where does your brain differentiate like thin? If you think
A
thin,
thin
so
edge.
yeah, so if it's not thin, if so 12 thousandths is thin, at what point would you just be surfing like a big chunk of steel? Eighth of an inch?
Uh, I'm just thinking if it wasn't a knife, I guess is my thought. Like if it
I was just
was a
curious.
mold, like a mold cavity
Right.
for injection molding, I don't
So
know.
supported on the
Yeah,
sides.
yeah,
Do you support the backside of the blade?
yeah. So on the old fixture, it worked amazingly, and I would do it again this way. But on the old fixture, on the front side, there's no tabs on the knife, so it's just a free floating tip. But on the front side, I just machine it. Obviously, the backside you get the overhang that needs support. What I did on the old fixture is I poured epoxy on the fixture, and then took the knife that had just had the front bevel done. I oiled it with like gun oil essentially, and laid it in the epoxy, and then bolted it down and let it dry overnight. So the knife would just come off the dry epoxy because of the oil, and you have like a negative of the exact
Mm-hmm.
shape of it, which is amazing because it's perfect.
Right.
It's the exact shape. The only thing is, this morning I was like, that was the last thing I needed to do to this fixture this morning, and I wanted to start running bevels, and I was like, well, I've got a big pile of scrap Delrin. If I poured the epoxy, it'd be literally no labor, but I would have to wait like 24 hours to get this thing running, or I could pocket it out, machine the Delrin insert on the Tormach, put the insert in, surface it on the Syil, and then be good to go. And that took me like an hour and a half. And so it was more labor, but it saved me from the dry time. So like
And
the
it's a more
epoxy,
robust system,
yeah,
kind of.
it's replaceable and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, the epoxy lasted for honestly hundreds of knives.
sure.
And if it ever wore out, you machine it right off the top and then pour it again if you need it.
Yep.
But yeah, I just thought about it. I was like, yeah, I could just machine little
I like
practice
that. I like
machining.
that solution better.
Yeah.
Just it seems more, I don't know, it seems more thought out, like
Yeah. Yeah.
cleaner.
So that's what I did. It works
Nice.
perfect. I ran like 5 bevels today off of that setup with the Delrin insert, and I just super glued it in. And then I have the pocket program. I machined a pocket in the aluminum
Uh-huh.
fixture. So I'll just run, when it wears out, I'll run that same program. So
Right.
it'll machine the Delrin away,
Right.
disappear, put a new one in.
Love it.
So yeah, so it
So
worked
cool.
really good. So supports the whole edge from basically choil to tip,
Yep.
and I surfed it with the exact same kind of reverse pattern of the back side of the blade, so it just touches it. I mean, I've seen various makers do that, and it works perfectly fine. In the next knife, I might do a tab on the tip, but it's kind of like two half dozen of one dozen of the other. It's like
Sure.
if you put a tab on the tip, you have to mill the tab off after the
Right.
bevel's complete, which
Or
is like a
grind it off. Yeah.
vibration. It's like either a vibration problem or you're
Yep.
hand grinding,
Yep.
but it's probably even more
The way
rigid.
that you're
So
doing, like you're
it
doing it,
works.
you're losing an entire step. Like you don't
Yeah,
have it.
it
If it
works.
works on the next model, it's
Yeah,
like I would address it after the fact.
it's. I'll say this: it is not enough to do what I'm doing if you're hard milling. You do
Right.
need a tab for hard milling because it's just too much tool pressure at the tip. Even like with Delrin, it'll push it. It'll still deflect.
I actually am trying something hard milling, but it's manual.
Nice.
I'm gonna
Manual?
see if it works. Yeah, manual.
What's that?
I'm playing with hard milling my lock faces on the blade.
Mm,
We'll see if it
nice.
works. I've done one, but I haven't truly fit it. I was like, I wonder if this would work. So basically, I have an angle fixture set up on my mill,
Mm,
and this is very much like knife maker engineering. I just ran my
yeah.
mill fast with a carbide end mill, and I was like, kept speeding it up till it stopped chattering, and it
Nice.
seems like it's working.
Well,
So
cool. So
yeah.
how is the tool oriented to the tang?
So it would create a flat lock face.
But with the
So
end or with
yeah,
the side of the
cutting
end
with the
mill?
end. So I
The end.
tried it with the side first because I was
Mhm.
curious. Um, Obviously, cutting with the side, you're going to get a lot more flex.
Mhm.
Um, I was not getting as clean of a finish as cutting
with the
with the end
side.
of the mill. Yeah, cutting with the
Yeah.
side didn't. So it's kind of, I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think it would work both ways.
Yeah.
I can see pros and cons. But if this works, so the thought process behind it and the reason I'm trying it is, um, currently I fit my locks on a like a 2-inch wheel on a 2x72 grinder with a angle, basically like an adjustable plate and
Mm-hmm.
slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that because they're fit with a belt, I just think belts leave like more margin for error. If you're trying to create a precision fit, a belt is not like the number one solution unless it's in constant movement,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because of the way that the abrasives wear. So I think that if I
Yeah.
can mill it, I can create a really
Yeah.
like airtight lock. We'll see.
No, that'd be sweet. You
Yeah.
could put a servo going back and forth on your tracking wheel.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because a lot of times when I'm doing it by hand, I'll actually do my tracking wheel and I'll move
Yeah.
it just so there's a small amount
Yeah.
of
Like a
like X
surface
travel.
grinder.
Yeah, kind of like a
Yeah.
surface grinder.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
I'm excited
I'm
to see how that
always,
turns out. Hard
yeah,
milling and stuff. Hard milling,
yeah,
it's scary, but it's actually more approachable than it seems. The
right,
few times I've done it, if you hold the work well and you have a
right,
stout machine, it works.
yeah.
It's not the end of the
This is
world.
my first foray into it, and it's manual, and it's kind of funny. But I'm like, it's
Yeah.
such a small part. I'm cutting a 3/8
Skimming it.
length on, yeah, just skimming it, small passes.
Hmm. Yeah, just wear safety
But
glasses.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Lots of carbide.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this because you're like learning Syil
Mhm.
and now working with Syil like pretty heavily. So still happy?
Oh yeah, dude. It's really, really accurate. Like
Yeah.
scary accurate. And also the Pearson is proving to be very accurate as well. But I mean, again, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll recheck my work offset with the Heimer. It's like the maximum differential between two work offsets, including the Pearson being on there, that I've ever seen is like 3/10.
Yep.
And that's with thermal all over the place. That's taking the pallet off, putting it back on. That's
That's amazing.
like just all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's so much going on in my shop thermally because it's just a small shop, and that machine with the phase converter heats it up. It'll swing like 30 degrees in a day easy inside that shop, and it's just not moving. And it just is shocking because where it would get me with an iron Tormach machine, and like I said, not knocking Tormach or Haas or any machine, just iron, is that with the temperature swings in my shop, where it really gets you is chamfers, because I chamfer both sides of the blade, and chamfers are really easy to notice when there's not the
They're
same on
not
each side.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it going from one side to the other, if the work offset moves, then the chamfers move and you see it. And so I was always like fine tuning, like moving few tenths. It was almost every like third, fourth knife, just kind of trying to chase it.
Oh wow.
And now it's just like it's there. It just
You're
it's
good.
repeatable.
I wonder if
So
that's like an argument specifically for small shops.
hmm
Because I'm in the same boat. Like my CNC is in a room that's probably 800 square feet.
hmm
Um, if I run it for a day, like my shop gets warmer.
yeah, yeah,
If you're in a big warehouse with tall ceilings, you're gonna see less of like an overall temperature change. So I
yeah,
wonder if like small machine, granite base, small space is like like a big added value.
yeah, yeah. Especially if you plan on not heating the shop for like a weekend. You know what I
Right.
mean? Or like let's say you're, you know, part time enough where it's possible you'll go on vacation and it'll drop in temperature to like even winter temperatures in the garage.
Yeah.
Like an iron casting, it's not necessarily going to damage it,
Right.
but it's going to move like huge amounts,
Does
like
the style have
all
like a
over.
cold? Like, will it tell you if you like the Haas you fire it up and it's like, oh, the machine's cold? Like you're gonna
Uh,
do a warm up.
I always do a spindle warm up, but it
You do a
doesn't
spin, yeah,
say, it doesn't
yeah,
have I don't think it has a sensor
like
that I'm
right,
aware of.
right.
But I do always, spindle warm up is critical, man. It's
Does it
super
have a
important.
spindle warm up program,
No, but
or you just created it?
it came with a sticker on the front of the spindle that had their recommendations
Oh,
just
cool,
written out, and I basically wrote that into a G code so I could just run that in the morning. And they
nice,
break it down like if you haven't ran it in a week, this is the warm up. If you've only ran it yesterday, this is the warm up, etc.
huh?
So, but it's I think the consequences of not warming it up is even harsher on this spindle because the ball bearings in it, I hear, are ceramic, whereas
Right.
a lot of them have iron ball bearings, and it's that ceramic is sensitive. I think it's like it
Right.
needs to be warm before you load it. The iron races and stuff.
Yep.
And the only ding I have against the Syil so far that's weird is it's a high RPM spindle, like 12,000. And when you get in the higher RPMs, it's not loud, but it's got a really high frequency
Ooh.
pitch
Uh-huh.
to that sound. And it sounds like a turbine. If you can picture like a
Yeah,
jet
it's almost
engine,
like a
like a
double noise.
it's like a whistle of like a
Yeah.
turbo.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I was going to take the cover off of the spindle because I've not looked in there. I'm wondering if it's got a air, like a fan that is cooling it, that is making that sound. Because when I start the Tormach up, it'll go up to 10,000 and I'll run to 10,000. And if I run this thing at 10,000, it's a lot higher pitch. And it's not like a scream, but it's like much more
You're not
noticeable.
used to it. It's funny how much sound plays into everything we do,
Yeah.
whether that's like hand grinding a blade or running a CNC machine. Like little cues in the sound are like,
Yeah.
oh, ooh, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like could be the part, could be the spindle, could be whatever it is. Like
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't, it doesn't sound like it's wrong. It sounds smooth, but
right.
it's just a really high frequency.
You haven't asked about it yet?
I haven't yet. I
Yeah.
was thinking about it. I could ask even just on the group, like, is this the way yours sounds too,
Yeah.
kind of
It's
thing.
probably not something you could like
Yeah.
capture in audio really
No,
either. I would
because
bet.
I'll even turn my head and not be able to hear it, and then I'll move my head in the right spot, and it'll just hit me because it's such a high frequency that it's very like directional, I guess. But it's not like painful to the ears, but it's just it's more annoying for
Right.
sure than the Tormach.
Interesting. So I finally got my like Kazers up and running and everything, and they're rotary screw compressors. They're supposed to be pretty quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is super quiet. My last one had this secondary noise.
Mm-hmm.
I had asked them about it, and they're like, "No, no, that's like what it sounds like." This machine does it for like a second when it starts up, and then it levels out. It drove me nuts
Mm-hmm.
on my last one because I was like, there was something about like the quality of the sound where I was like, my brain was just saying like, there's something mechanically like out of balance, or that's like a fan blade or like something weird. Like, why is there this like higher pitched, like secondary noise?
Mm-hmm.
When the tech was here, I was like, I asked him about it, and he's like, some of the machines, they're tuned differently. And he's like, they can actually sound completely different. And I was like, that is
Hmm.
wild. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's like how accurate that is or anything else. But
Interesting. When you're dealing with RPM, I mean, high RPM, there's a reason balancing and stability
yeah,
at high RPM is such a big science, is that sound frequency. But the nice thing is, like running the Overland, I never get to that RPM range. So I don't hear it at all when I'm running this
what's
knife.
your max RPM on the Overland?
Uh, Probably 7,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's just when you're doing stainless steel, you don't want crazy high RPM because
Right.
you get rubbing.
Right.
But with
Like
aluminum and with
smearing kind of, right?
small tools, I moved my engraving. I do my logo and I write the steel on the Overland. I was doing it on the engraving it with the Tormach, but I decided to laser engrave that instead, like deep etch it. And so that was the only thing that would have used like 11,000 RPM. And
Right.
I not for that reason, but I decided to ditch that on the CNC side.
You're going to use it like crazy when you're building folders.
That
Because that's
yeah,
all
for
like, I mean,
sure.
I'm
That
running
small
like,
diameter tools.
yeah, I do jimping with like a 30-second end mill.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Do you not
ridiculous.
drill your jimping?
I do. Yeah. For those, I do actually drill.
Yeah.
So let's see I guess I do. So it's a 30-second drill on that argument still holds speed, and like pec drilling. And then I guess like maybe some of my lock slots, 40 thousandths, 40 or like 46
Yeah.
thousand.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
that.
where it really
Like
kick
nice
in.
small. So
If you're laterally milling, like
yeah.
slot milling. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Like 16th of an inch is pretty common. 93 thousandths, like around those. So just a lot of small tools.
Yeah. So I guess I'll circle back. That's the only ding I've noticed at all is if you're gonna run it at 11,000 RPM, it's a little whiny. It's a little
Oh, nobody likes a whiner.
yeah. So I was gonna take it off and see because it doesn't sound like it's inside of a metal like cartridge. That sound,
Ooh,
it almost
interesting.
makes me wonder if it's the motor. You know what I mean? Because it sounds like it's not covered by steel. You know what I mean? It sounds very like external.
Right.
So it's like it is either it's like the pulley, or because there's a belt drive, it's either like the pulley or it's the motor.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's
I'm
not
super
like,
curious. You should just reach out and ask him. That's like
yeah, yeah,
okay. So I'm watching. I'm so hesitant because I'm a slow learner and I know my Haas. It's
yeah,
like figuring out new things is scary
yeah.
sometimes.
No, that it took me a minute to figure this one out, but it having at least some machining experience was really beneficial. And
Yeah.
once I got it
It's
figured out, it
interesting
was,
inside of the Syil, not to like make this the Syil show, but like inside of the Syil group, it seems like everybody's a machinist.
yeah, I
Like
think
for the
so.
most
Yeah,
part, like the way that they like the things that they're talking about, the questions they have, and the way that they're programming parts, everybody just seems like a fairly accomplished
hmm,
machinist,
yeah, yeah. It seems like it for sure.
right?
Yeah, I would agree.
And they're buying
Yeah,
Syil, so that's kind of interesting.
yeah. No,
I'm excited.
I can't complain. I'm coming up on like, I don't know, 70, 80 hours of spindle time on it, and not a single issue. I
Nice.
mean, no, the control hasn't even shown a speck of a glitch at all. And the other thing is, it's hard to say on Haas and other machines, older machines. I don't know, but on the Path Pilot, which controls Tormach, which I love Path Pilot for its user interface, it did have a hard time reading a lot of lines of codes fast in
Uh
terms
huh.
of catching up with that. So like on a Haas, you can get like look ahead on it. You've probably
Right.
heard
Or is that the high speed
high speed
machining?
machining,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know what this control of the Syil, the Syntec controller. I don't know what it has for look ahead, but it must be pretty good because on the Tormach I was running 100 inches a minute on this bevel pass to do the step over for the bevel, and 100 inches a minute was the max I could get before it would start to stutter because of the lag in the computer side. And so on this machine, I cranked it up to 150, and it's perfectly smooth. And I don't know what the limit is,
Wow.
but it's 150 inches a minute on this bevel, and it's moving. I mean, it's going 150 inches a minute and then 1200 back, and it's not stuttering at all, and the bevel's not showing any stuttering. And so whatever that limitation is not as bad as the Path Pilot.
It's pretty cool. And that is
So,
not an additional paid for feature.
but I don't know if it I don't. I need to look at like the sales information or like the brochure on that control or the manual, because I don't know if it's like if it does have look ahead or if it's just that good at processing code that it doesn't do that. I don't know, but it is better for sure than the
So
Tormach.
many questions.
But I
All
don't know
right.
how it compares to like a new Haas without the
Right.
look ahead. How does it compare? I don't know.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to get to check out your machine soon, which is
Hmm.
pretty exciting in
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
That like brings us something that's kind of exciting coming up. I'm going to drive out, visit you, and we're going to shoot straight through to Blade Show West,
Hmm.
the
Heck yeah.
first Blade Show West in Salt Lake City.
Yes, sir. I can't wait, man.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be fun. Little road trip.
Yeah. It'll be your first time in my shop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you'll be the second knife maker to tour my shop
Oh,
behind
that's crazy.
Richard Rogers.
Oh man,
And
two New
shout out to Richard
Mexicans in your shop.
Rogers. He visited, him and Sally visited, and dude, he sent us a custom executive, like a custom this his custom version of the CEO, and we're over the moon about that. So thank you, Richard and Sally. You guys are the
They're
best.
good as
And
gold.
yeah, so
It's
but
awesome.
I'll be awesome to have you in there too. It'll be fun. And
I'm not sending you a knife.
oh, dude, I
So,
already have one of your customs, so you don't have to. Yeah,
okay. So Blade Show West. Let's forecast it, man. I have some thoughts on this. I'm disproportionately excited about it. Okay.
really okay
Yeah.
in a
I
good
want
way,
to
like
hear.
the
I
yeah
want to hear what you think. Like just overall, like there's going to be a Blade Show, and it's going to be what 5 hours from you.
yeah ballpark
Okay.
about 5ish.
What do you think? Success? Do you think it's like Good idea.
I am absolutely amazed. Not amazed. I'm happy that they moved it to Salt Lake. If people didn't know, it was in Portland like what 10 years ago. They
Yep.
quit doing it. Period for like
Yep.
5 years or
For a
something,
while.
and then they brought it back to Portland for 2 years. Did okay. They took it to California for 1 year, and it was in the middle of COVID in Long Beach. I don't know how that did, but it was in the worst of times with the whole
Yep.
COVID thing. And then now they're going to Salt Lake, and it's the best of those, in my opinion.
Yep.
For me, for me being greedy and wanting it close to me, it's nice to have it in Salt Lake. But also, I think the Salt Lake town is going to be awesome for hosting an event like that because, dude, they hosted the Olympics.
Right.
Like they can host a lot of people. They
Yep.
have a great airport. They have great hotels that are affordable. You
Yep.
can get a hotel right next to the center. I mean, it has what you need.
For specifically for a show of a blade show size. The other blade shows, they're smaller shows, right? Like the Wests are always smaller. I actually see the potential for this to be a larger and very valuable show. I just think it's just the ease. Like it fits culturally, it's a good fit. It's an easy city to get into if you're on the West Coast. There's flights to it from everywhere. Also, I mean, in the United States, as far as like cutlery hubs, you kind of have Portland and Idaho. Idaho is, and it's probably like fairly tight in, like, is it safe to say that like knife industry in Idaho is primarily Boise?
Yeah, that and it also
And surrounding?
buck knives, which is way
Yeah,
north.
which is north, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. I just think I think all the pieces are in place. Going to Salt Lake in the fall, it's like good time to go. It's a good city. Like big shows like this, I think more people are more prone to like travel with their families, and I just like the idea that you can go to a show, make it a family vacation, like
Yeah.
split off for a day or two or whatever, and then like still have something on the tail end. So
Mm-hmm.
I am very, very curious to see how it does. But I
You
think
know the
there's a
guys
lot
at
of potential.
the guys at Blade HQ are down there just like
Yeah.
stoked. They're
I
so
know.
happy right now.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure.
not even to mention like Blade HQ is
Yeah.
like smack dab.
And they're in
So,
Salt Lake, if you
yep.
didn't know.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I'm very, very curious. I'm super excited. I got asked to sit on an expert panel.
Nice.
Basically to like people can bring in their knives to like a small group and have them critiqued.
That's awesome.
So if you're listening to this, I'm not going to be easy.
Yeah. We're talking about it before this. He's going to bring a bull whip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A hammer.
And a 18-inch
Vice.
ruler to slap your wrist. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I mean, really, this is the kind of stuff like we've kind of talked about shows in the past, but like these little community elements of it that just make it so much fun. Like I get to sit up and hang out with some other makers and look at like new makers'
That's gonna
knives.
be fun.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Eat some
Yeah.
good
So
food.
if any of you guys are going to Salt Lake, look us up, and we'll be both on foot. We're losers and we don't have tables, so
yeah,
you just have to snag
roaming.
us by our shirt when we go by, I guess.
Yeah, this is like what we did for Blade Show Atlanta, just going to hang out, walk, and visit people.
That's gonna be a good time.
So.
And for me, it's nice too because I always haven't done it yet, but I have the dream of linking these shows up with some sort of outdoors expedition. Like I've always talked about doing that with SHOT Show, which is in Vegas, driving down, off-roading the Jeep on the way down and doing that on the way back. And there isn't a better place than Utah for the overland Jeep life. And so not this year, but I'm thinking it's going to have to turn into a bigger picture thing. Like maybe we get the Blade HQ guys on board and hit the Moab scene. And
did you do it before or after? Do you like walk into Blade Show and like smack the dust off yourself because you just got off the trail?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Give some street cred. I don't know. I kind of like it.
I know, right?
Throw your hard case of Overlands onto the table and like.
Yeah. I think it sounds amazing. I think if the Overland box had actual dirt on it, like you said, like some Moab red dirt, like here, let me wipe this down.
Yeah, the makers
here's the Overland knives.
Yeah. Crack it. You can't buy that kind of authenticity.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's strapped to my roof rack.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's crashed through the wall.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that means you're going to do a show. You want to do a show? Do you have like a tempo on it yet? Like, what's the first show?
I keep looking at the next show and thinking like, all right, I'm going to start to get ready for this, but I keep not getting ahead on knives that I already have on order.
Yeah,
That's my thing. And so it's like I wouldn't go to a show if I had a whole lot of people that have orders in with me that I haven't
sure.
fulfilled. But I can say this current I'm as I talked about on the last podcast, I'm swelling my output enough to meet and exceed demand, which should pave the way for the show.
Right.
That's the whole goal. So 2023, I think that looks like a real possibility. So I'm doing those things required to get there, and it'll happen when it happens. And I think it'll be fun, really
Yeah.
fun.
Nice. Blade West might be a good one for you. I mean, just
Hmm.
overall, like easy, can drive there.
Yeah.
You
And
don't
have
have to
like
take like a ton of product.
and your booth. I mean, like you
Yeah.
always think about if I go to Atlanta and I want to have it, even if it's a table, if I want to have even a little bit of stuff like a sign and stuff, I mean,
Yep.
there's a little bit of a issue with getting that across
And it's so
2,500
hard.
miles.
We always rented a minivan and went to IKEA and would like build out a booth from like
Yeah.
IKEA and banners and
Hmm.
like, and that
It's
was with
tough.
like 2 or 3 people with me.
I was thinking someone needs to start a business with like if they had a back, a barn in the back of their place in Atlanta and just say, hey, everyone at Blade Show, I'll store your crap for a few $100 for the year or something like
True
that.
story. Someone used to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's smart.
A buddy of mine had a company called Going Gear that was there, and I
Mm.
think there was a few makers that he would stash
Mm.
their show setups. So we've been using like a 3PL, right? Third party logistics for our shipping.
Hmm.
They actually will ship our trade show supplies. I've never done that, but
Mm.
like I could have a pallet, wrap the pallet, they'll send it. It gets like dropped off on the Blade Show floor at my booth. You build your booth up. You've done SHOT Show before. I mean, that's like if you haven't done a trade show, it's like amazing to see how fast like the efficiency of like the infrastructure works. By the time Blade Show is over, they're basically like you're like loading your booth up, trying to get out the door, and they're rolling carpets up
Hmm.
because they're starting a new show the next day.
It's insane.
It's wild. So yeah, so like in this case, like we would have our pallet gets dropped off, you build your booth, the show's over, you repack the pallet, leave it on the floor, and it shows up back at home. Pretty cool.
That'd be awesome.
I know.
That would make me even more interested in doing it. I might have to
I
look
know.
up a third party logistics in Boise. Sure, there's one here.
Guaranteed you have one.
Yeah, yeah,
Guaranteed.
I think so.
So
Yeah,
I think with the
I'll look into
numbers that
that.
you're doing, you're really close to just like it just making
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I'm gonna delegation. It's a big thing. I'm gonna have to continue to exercise that. So,
Yep.
a little side tangent. Have you ever
Yeah.
considered going to IMTS?
So many times since I was like 17.
It's it's the SHOT Show of CNC machines
Yes.
and
Manufacturing in
everything
general.
manufacturing. So
Yeah.
tumbling robots, welding
Yeah.
robots,
Tony Stark would
automation,
definitely be there.
and it's in Vegas. And I like going to Vegas for
Wait,
trade
is it in
shows.
Vegas? I thought it was in Chicago.
Well, now I'm thinking I might be mistaken, but someone told me that there was maybe it's a second one, maybe it's IMTS West.
I'm
I
gonna
actually don't know.
I'm gonna Googler it
Yeah, there's something in
right
Vegas. It might
now.
not be the IMTS, but
AMTS 20.
I just thought of IMTS when you said imagine breaking down a show. I'm like, imagine breaking down a show where you had a 25,000 pound CNC machine
I
filled
know.
with coolant.
I know.
Like that, I can't even. Wow,
Yeah. It's Chicago.
Chicago. So I wonder
Yeah.
what's in Vegas. Guess we
I
don't
don't
have to
know.
go
I don't
too
know.
far into that
We'll look
tangent,
at that
but
one.
there's
Vegas would be
something in
easier.
Vegas. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard about IMTS. I was working at that place, Cinequanon, which made titanium body jewelry, and some of the machinists from there had gone.
Hmm.
I had just started, so I didn't get to go, and I was bummed.
Hmm.
But
Someday I'll get there. Be fun.
yeah, that might be like a good road trip.
Yeah.
/ just fly in and eat and do IMTS for the weekend. I don't know.
Chicago's way off the. I've never been anywhere near that part of the country. So
Oh,
it'd be
really?
cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Not even close, man. I've been all over the West Coast, but the only eastern place I've been to is Florida and Georgia. So I haven't been anywhere northeast.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
do that. I don't know. It just popped into my head. A friend of mine just recently sent a picture from a steakhouse in Chicago
Hmm.
that uses Kwaiken. I mean, like years ago, I designed a Kwaiken steak knife for Boker.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so they actually have the Kwaiken steak knives as their table knives.
Yeah.
And that's
Somebody's got good
super
taste.
exciting. I didn't know, didn't know that there was any restaurants that had them.
Yeah, well, now you do.
So yeah.
So that's on the checklist for Chicago.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like they have good steak. So
yeah,
I'm in.
sounds good.
Nice, man.
So what is your week looking like next week? Or the rest of this week and next week?
Basically, this week, like I'm kind of tailing it out. I'm trying to get to a good stopping point on the Kwaikens. I've had like a bunch. I'm still doing this like the maker manager thing, and it's proving to be super helpful. So like yesterday was my hustle day. So had a bunch of meetings, set up a new project with my buddies over at Paladin. And yeah, today is back. I'm back in the shop. So basically trying to like wrap up the Kwaikens, get them to a good stopping point. Next week, we're actually going down to New Mexico to see my dad for a couple days.
Albuquerque.
And then, Albuquerque, see friends. So man, it's so hard. Like this work and like family stuff. It's like so hard to figure out times to like do these trips, you know? So this was like the one time. So I get back the day before you and I leave for SHOT Show. Some Blade Show. And then so I'm going to be driving a lot because we decided to drive.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So I'm going to drive to Salt Lake.
Albuquerque?
Twice in 3 days.
Yeah. Jeez.
I know.
Wow.
It's like it's like 18 hours to Albuquerque. We were just looking at it and like I had actually bought flights, but just like the timing was crummy and like layovers are crummy. I was like, why are we doing this? Like just do a road trip.
So it's a bit of a tangent, but I'm getting really excited for this. It's a hunting trip I'm putting together with my dad.
Nice.
So my grandpa worked on a ranch near Salmon where I grew up in Idaho that was like tucked away. It's surrounded completely by public land and it's like on the side of a mountain. And it's this beef ranch that was just like, I don't know, 500 acres, not massive. And he worked on it and he passed away a year ago or last year basically. And there was a lake that was off near the ranch that he had talked about like for decades that no one had ever seen. Literally like nobody that was at the ranch. The only reason people had heard about it is like through like old wives' tales and stuff that there was this lake. And
wow.
Yeah. And so after he passed, my dad was thinking like, you know what? I'm going to go find that lake. You know, it kind of like spurred him. And so he went and found it and there was no sign of like human activity at this lake. And it's just this small, you know, few acre size lake that's like, there's no trail to it. And my grandpa's name was Bernie and we made a sign that says like Bernie's Lake. And I haven't made it up there yet, but my dad and uncle went up there and put a post in and put a sign on it. It says Bernie's Lake. And we're going to go put a wall tent on that lake and we're going to hunt out of it for mule deer in October.
Oh man, that sounds amazing.
So we're going to put the wall tent in. My dad's big time horseman. He's got mule stock and horse stock. So we're going to take it in there and spend a few days. I haven't been to the lake yet. So I'm like so excited. It's going to be fun.
The fact that stuff even exists, like untouched, at least visibly, you know.
What happened was there used to be a road cut into it like 80 years ago, 70 years ago. And a fire came through a long time ago and it burned up and all the deadfall covered the road. And then everything grew back and covered the road and no one ever recut it. And so it became like surrounded by timber to where, and it's the new growth from after the fire. So they're like so close together that you can't like walk through very well. And so my dad had to kind of find a route to it that made sense. And it wasn't even on what used to be the road. And so it used to be trafficked, but it could be like
until when?
We don't know.
Can't figure it out.
I could ask him, but it could be like a generation ago. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? So a few generations, I don't know. But it's hard to say when like the last, and there was fish in it that you could see them rising and stuff. So,
oh man, you're gonna have a good trip.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm getting excited. I guess we'll start with some upland.
Yeah, do some upland bird hunting.
Yeah, get some upland birds. So
it's fun.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So what about you? So this week, okay, you're on Overlands, and how are you doing it right now? Are you like working? Are you working batches, or are you just kind of like working open ended I'm always curious about that.
I got to work batches because of heat treat.
Yep.
I would love to have, because one piece flow I'm a big fan of, or at least close to it, like small batch. But without heat treat, it's just you can't do it. It's not a
Yep.
real possibility. And I just don't think I'll bring heat treat in for a long time because I don't have space and whatever. But so I'm doing a big batch right now, a pretty dang big batch. And then what I'm trying to do is everything else do pretty small batch. So I kind of am forced into big batch on the tangs, but the handles, the sheaths, pretty small, like, you know, lean manufacturing style, just like
Right.
build it
As
just in
needed.
time. Yeah. So, but I've got for overlands, like right now, what I'm machining, I've got like 180 of them to machine right now. So that's what this next push will be, is a pretty good hard
So
push.
theoretically, how much time is that for you? Like, what do you see that being? A
So
couple
it's,
weeks?
if it is, if it, let's say it's 40 minutes per, if you count changeover, which is sounding realistic, that's probably 10 a day. Depending on if I run it after I leave the shop, like one more,
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, definitely 3 weeks
3 weeks.
plus,
And are
but
you running both spindles right now?
yeah, and
Okay. So
that's
you're
the other
doing
one's running
handles or,
handles.
yep.
Yeah. But I'm going to split it into two batches off to heat treat, just because
It's
I
a good
want to have
idea.
that first batch come back
Yep. Staggered.
before having to do all of them. So it's going to get divided at one point. So I'm not sure when that'll happen. It since I'm dividing into two, it doesn't have to be exactly even 50-50. I might do like 50 knives and then peel it off. Just to verify a lot of this new stuff that's happened going through heat treat. Like, I've found that big batches, if you've done changes to something,
Yep.
even if you're 100% confident, just be a little weary about
I just
doing
like
it.
running. I like running smaller numbers. I think like what you're doing, splitting it. I just think it makes so much more sense because
Yeah,
then you're staggering your workflow. You'll be able to get to
yeah,
work on those blades faster
yeah.
and you won't make it through that first round before the second batch comes back from heat
Mm,
treat. Just
yeah.
makes sense.
And the other thing is, I've got those scalpels that I made, that big batch of scalpels. They're done at heat treat. I got the call today. So
Nice.
what I'm going to do is, I told them it'd be a couple of days. I'm going to machine a few more overlands so that I can do. It's about an hour drive to go to the heat treater. So I'm going to go take him this smaller peel off batch of the overlands and get those scalpels, and then that'll be what I'll be doing while the overlands are running, is actually finishing those
Right.
scalpels. So
Perfect.
that's what the handwork looks like in front of me right now. So one machine doing handles, one machine doing overlands, me finishing
And you
scalpels.
finishing.
That's what that those 2 or 3 weeks looks like right
That's
now,
perfect.
leading up to Blade Show.
Yeah. It's interesting. So you'd sent me a video from Pearson. I forget what the designation was. It was like IS3 or something. It was like their cleaning process.
I
So
did.
basically, yeah, it was like they clean at the end of the, or they clean in the beginning of the day. So they clean in the
Oh,
morning, and then basically like, this is crap because I can't actually remember like what their verbiage was, but essentially they clean, organize, and then like get rid of. Right.
mm,
So if you're like, oh, you find like 5 Allen wrenches that came with tools that you don't need, they're just in there. It's not stuff you paid for. Like, get rid of them.
mm-hmm,
I was thinking about that as like almost like a design flow. So
mm-hmm,
right now I'm working on the 5 Quikens, and the goal is to, before I run the next 5 Quikens, I would go through and I would make a round of design changes. In At the outset, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll finish the knives and then automatically make the changes.
there you go.
As I was watching that video, I was like, huh, I wonder if it makes sense, as opposed to being like, man, I'm done. Like, you're done with them. It's like the end of the day, almost the end of a job. Instead of going into that spot, because you're kind of done creatively and like mentally, I think, as opposed to that, like next time I make Quikens, it would be the job starts with making those design updates,
Mm,
and then you go directly into the
yeah,
manufacturing of them.
yeah.
And I like that better.
It gives you a little spark to start things out too.
Exactly. It gives you like a runway, because you look at all your processes and you're like, okay, cool. Well, I know I need to change like my backspacer thickness and blade thickness. It just seems much more streamlined than doing it at the tail end,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, no,
Also,
yeah,
because
it's
if you're at
very
the tail
logical.
end, you would only be making the changes but not be implementing them.
Yeah,
And that seems weird. So, kind of a fun
yeah,
like link from something
I
that was
like that.
basically like, clean your
Unrelated, but
toolbox in the morning.
parallel.
Yeah.
That's smart.
So,
No, that makes total sense.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out like what the next the goal is to move through knives, and like, so the next time I might do like run of tunas and just like kind of updating until I get to the point where I'm doing something completely new. Right. Which brings me to that next question of like, when are you doing the new model?
I was actually just thinking about that. So let's talk about, to answer that, I'll raise you this. What is your goal and my goal for this next week before the next
Ooh.
podcast? Because my goal involves that.
Yeah, my goal doesn't, because I'm gone.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, I
So I'm
guess
gonna be
you
on
don't
the
have
road.
to have a goal.
Yeah, safe travels. That's all I want.
Yeah, safe travels. That's fair
Yeah.
enough. So I designed the new knife to 99%, and
Okay.
I'm making like 2 more tweaks, and it should be ready. I have a 3D print that I'm like 99% happy with. I'm going to do the final touches, and my goal by next week when we record is to machine one handle scale for that knife, because I don't need a fixture to do it.
Right.
I can machine it out of a block, and I will build a fixture later. But the way that I got my juices flowing on the Overland is I had all the 3D prints and the models, but when I machined the first micarta handle to the Overland, that like lit my fire. And I know
Wow.
if I have one handle scale to look at from this new knife, I'm gonna want the tang, like, and I'm gonna want it now, kind of thing. And so I want to have it in my hand as like a little motivational tool of like, you've already got the handle, let's
Make the
do it.
rest. Super interesting. I would start with the tang. Like my brain would
Yeah.
just make, I think that is actually a function of like my hand making background,
Hmm.
because it just makes more sense. Like I
Yeah.
would create the profile of the knife before I made any of the other parts.
Right.
You would start with a handle scale.
The only reason I'd start the handle scale is because it requires the least setup to do.
Makes perfect sense.
And so it's like it's the lowest hanging fruit of the whole project. And that
Right.
being said, like I said, I will have to build the production fixture for it.
Yep.
But like the Overland, I made the first big number of them without a production fixture. You can't do that with a tang. You have to have a production fixture to do the tangs the way I do it. So I won't be able to make fix a tang for the
Right.
new knife without
Yeah, you'd
the
have to
full
basically
fixture.
you'd have to just like cut it and leave tabs, and then you wouldn't have your chamfer. So yeah,
Yeah,
your process, it makes like perfect sense.
yeah, exactly.
Pretty exciting,
So
man.
I already have, I think I mentioned this, I already have the steel coming. So I just got to order another Pearson pallet. This pallet worked so well that I'm going to copy paste all of my techniques, which should be really good. You know,
Yep.
it should work. That was one of the things I was waiting for, was like, if this pallet works, then all of the fixture hardware, all of the strategies will copy over,
Yep.
which should make it, to get that one live, as far as, because I'll have the bevel recipe, I'll have all these recipes for all the tooling. I can
Yep.
copy paste all of the things and then just reassociate it with a new geometry,
Yep.
and I have a new fixture
Don't
and a
solve the same
new
problem
knife.
twice.
Exactly. And so that's where I'm headed. So the tang won't take much, but the reason I can't jump the gun on that is I still have to have it water jet and surface ground. So I don't have to. I could use a piece of bar stock, but might as well. I mean, I'll
Pretty
just,
cool, man. You just got my brain firing. So I'm like thinking like, oh, it's like actually going on in the shop. So like my brain has been focused on soft goods lately. I've been having a really good time. So we had done that. We done that pouch called the ODC, which was organized daily carry, obsessive daily carry. That rolled in. So it's like, it's funny how your brain works. Like when you're in, I feel like a design process. I'm not a soft goods designer. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but in this last like 2 month stretch, we've basically, so I'm working on like a belt, a chest, like a crossbody chest bag, like
mm-hmm.
I call it a dad bag. So it's basically
It's a
like,
satchel.
it's a satchel that you wear across your chest. Kind of like combo snack carry / concealed carry bag, like super low pro. Man, I've just been having so much fun with it.
Yeah. Going
So
full
it's,
Louis Vuitton.
yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It's nice to break away from knives sometimes and like
Mm-hmm.
put your brain on solving a different type of problem.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, like it's crazy. There's always so much going on. It's like, but I focus, it's always like in my head, the only thing that is relevant is knives somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've got a batch of titanium side pops going on. it's funny. I finished my surface grinder and the airlines, right? Those two things, I finished them and I felt like a huge weight had been lifted. It's like nesting. Like if you're a maker, like not having certain tools in place makes your house feel out of order.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
weird.
No, I'm in the same boat, dude. If there's something disturbing your piece,
Yep.
it derails you. Yeah.
It's crazy. And it doesn't even do it in like an obvious way sometimes. Like I hadn't been sketching and I noticed I like finished this and like one day I was just like, man, I like feel like sketching. I don't know that that's the cause, but in the back of my head, I'm like, there was this thing that was undone in my shop. Now I'm at the point where my last two shops were at when I left them of functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So the right amount of air and a surface grinder, which like
Nice.
doesn't seem like that much, but just like when you have a workflow over years and years and years, you have one piece missing and you're like, this is weird. So
yeah,
feels good.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I want to see your shop too. So you'll see mine before I see yours. I saw your Albuquerque shop, but I'm gonna have to. So my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are moving to Oregon.
Oh, really?
They're south central Oregon, like near the California border, right in the middle of the state.
Oh, cool.
And so
it's a good reason to drive through.
Yeah, we'll be in that neck of the woods more often too, I think. Nice. So
would you come through Bend? Or
no,
you probably drop at Burns or something.
Yeah, but it would make a loop. It would make a nice little circle. So
nice,
we'll have
man.
to do that.
That's exciting. I look forward to talking about that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. This was kind of a random show. Do we just call it? Yeah. This one, when I jumped on, you were so excited about the bevels.
Mm-hmm. just watching that new machine run, man, it's like it just feels good because it's just like it feels like a pyramid of tasks, to when you try to install a machine like that, like it's like every corner there's a snag and it's not like issues. It's just, oh yeah, I forgot I'm going to need to run air. Oh yeah, I forgot the power. Oh yeah, I forgot the T-slot nuts are metric. Oh yeah, I forgot, and it's like, it just stacks. And so when you're finally executing on the thing that you wanted, 6 weeks later, it's like finally you're there. You cross the finish line, and it's a good feeling.
Funny, that's the exact process for the surface grinder. It was like nothing I could do was the last job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Feels good, man. You did good. You got that done fast. You got the machine up and running. So from the time it hit your house to when you were running, what was that total time?
To running the scalpel, might have been like 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. That's
something
insane.
like that.
I think when I got my Haas, it sat in my shop for 6 months.
Yeah. Well, the Tormach was a little bit that way. I mean, I got it plugged in and running, but I didn't do anything of any real value for quite a few months. Just because it's like you're drinking through a fire hose because you're like, what's cam? How do I drill a hole? Like what is, and like, how deep do I feed this end mill? Oh, not that deep, Yeah.
Cool, man. So, you want to call it and pick up next time?
Yeah. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. And definitely leave us some feedback.
Yeah.
Shoot us DMs, ask questions.
Share this with a friend.
Yeah. Give us input.
That may or may not hate it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you hate it, tell us too.
Yeah. Share it with an enemy.
I probably won't care that you hate it, but
be curious.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys around.
Yeah. All right. See ya.